So hello everyone, and thank you for joining our State of Utah's Terraform Journey People Process Tools webinar. Hope everyone is staying safe and healthy out there. Today we're going to discuss how adopting an infrastructure as code approach and using Terraform has enabled the state of Utah to manage more infrastructure with their teams. I'd like to note that the webinar is being recorded and the recording will be made available after post-processing. I will email that out to everyone that registered for the event. Please submit your questions throughout the presentation through the Zoom Q&A portal, and then we'll answer them at the end. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. Take it away, James.
Thank you very much, Allison. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for taking the time to join and attend this. Just a little bit of detail on what we're going to be covering today. Agenda, we're just going to have a few introductions, let you know who is going to be presenting this webinar to you today. So I'll introduce myself and my fellow panelists. I want to cover a little bit of background about HashiCorp and HashiCorp products, and particularly the portions of the stack that have been useful to the state of Utah. And describe some of the challenges we see our customers facing and what that adoption curve tends to be like. Then what I'd like to do is sort of hand over the baton to my fellow panelists, have them describe and talk at length about their experiences working with Terraform, working with HashiCorp, and what that was like, perhaps with a number of lessons that we can explore in sort of the fourth part of the webinar. Recap some of those lessons and a little bit of a call to action and talk about some resources. And then I'd like to leave a few minutes at the end as well to allow you to ask your questions, and hopefully we can get you some answers and get you also on your journey to the cloud. So your panelists today will be Randy Spainhour, who's a cloud operations engineer with the state of Utah. He'll be one of our main protagonists today, giving a lot of the details of what their journey has been like. Patrick Funk, his manager and coworker, will also be talking a little bit about their experiences and his experience, especially from a management perspective. And then finally, myself, I'll introduce the first part of this webinar. I'm a senior solutions engineer at HashiCorp with the public sector team. And I support a lot of different accounts, but mainly this customer as well in their journey. So by way of background, I just want to talk a little bit about part of the reason why HashiCorp exists and what is the HashiCorp stack. So, HashiCorp's a company founded in 2012 that really has 4 different areas that we look at, and we actually call them our 4 workflows that together make up part of what's a distributed infrastructure. So for any company planning or making, setting up initiatives and projects designed to move them to the cloud, there's sort of 4 major challenges we see them facing as they go on that journey. And the very first is going to be, and this is regardless of whether you're trying to go into a hybrid cloud environment or whether you're with a single cloud provider, whether you're on-premise. And the first is going to be the operations piece. How do I actually provision the infrastructure that I need on demand, at scale, consistently, right? So it's not hard to open up a console and provision a number of resources that you might want. What is much harder is to do this in a much more consistent way, at scale, and in a way that is convenient for different stakeholders, whether it's your developers, your operations people, your security teams, your network teams, that all have to have input into how this infrastructure is set up. And so if you think of it as sort of a week's challenge, the Monday morning challenge would be the provisioning of infrastructure. And we'll cover that today, which is why I've kind of circled it there. The second challenge that you have is one around securing the infrastructure you just stood up. So if on Monday morning you stood up infrastructure, Monday afternoon would be the challenge of securing it, managing those secrets and keys and tokens and passwords that are required to go into that infrastructure. Once that infrastructure is ready, you now have a challenge of getting your developers and your other teams that have applications to actually run and deploy those applications on the infrastructure. That in itself is a challenge because there's so many different formats out there for packaging and provisioning applications once the infrastructure is ready. You have containers, you have edge devices, you have functions, right? You're talking about your Lambdas here and your Azure functions, for example. You have virtual machines, or you have machines, software going on bare metal. So there's so many different form factors. Then there's the question of legacy applications. All of those things need to be taken into consideration. And we solve that with a product called Nomad that actually will take legacy applications or containerized virtual machines, whatever your technology, and deploy those applications on that infrastructure in as efficient a way as possible. So that's your Tuesday morning challenge, right? So using the metaphor, Monday morning, Tuesday morning, now you're dealing with actually getting the applications on there. And for the rest of the week, you'd basically be dealing with the challenge of laying a logical network that connects all these applications and functions together in a way that you control over a network that you fundamentally may not trust. Okay, so we'll be focused on the bottom portion there, the operations piece. I'll be talking a little bit more about some of how that adoption curve looks like from our perspective, and then I'll pass on the baton to my fellow panelists. Sorry. So what do we see as the adoption curve? We see a lot of our customers starting out really with that infrastructure as code, as Alison mentioned. And infrastructure as code, for those who might not be aware, is simply an approach. It's an approach to defining what infrastructure you'd like to stand up using a file, usually a human readable file, but it's also machine parsable. And that file is declarative. It simply states the desired end state of the infrastructure you'd like to stand up. And so you use that infrastructure as code approach to enable the rest of your organization to use automation, to use software like Terraform and other automation engines to basically stand up your infrastructure, destroy your infrastructure, modify your infrastructure in as quick and as dynamic a way as possible. And a lot of these products that you see on the left-hand side here have open source equivalents. So we do see a lot of adoption on the open source side first, and then as our customers mature and need enterprise capabilities, they do come to us for those. So what you see there is a very, very typical path that we see. Terraform is usually the first in line. The infrastructure as code approach is really, really attractive for DevOps teams, as it was for the state of Utah. And once they launch into that and grow, they slowly see the need for the other pieces that you see there, the secrets management, the service registry and discovery, and then finally into actual orchestration of applications. All right, so just having given that quick reprise of the HashiCorp stack, I'd like to just tell you a little bit about this particular customer. So the state of Utah, this is a fantastic state, right? Number one in the nation, at least as of statistics from last year, in job growth rates, both in the private sector and overall. Large state by area, not as many people, but growing steadily. And you can see that this is an environment where there's a highly educated labor force, right? So, I can only say so much about the state. I'd like to hand it over to Randy. And Randy, maybe you can tell us a little bit more and go into your story. What was your journey like?
Yeah, thank you. So, as James mentions, we've done a lot in IT with the state of Utah. We've gotten a lot of awards for being pioneers in certain aspects of IT, but as the slide mentions, our infrastructure was mostly on premise and mostly manually provisioned when we started this journey. We didn't really have a lot of automation tools, weren't really doing much infrastructure as code at the time. We have a very large IT organization because, about 10 years ago or so, all of our IT was consolidated into one agency. So our processes include a lot of siloed groups, a lot of large groups that did just a couple of different things because we have such scale that we had to kind of be that way at first. And that led to many tasks for each type of thing. So if we said we need to deploy this application to the cloud, you can see that many different groups had to be involved and many different groups had many different tasks. That would take weeks, sometimes longer, to get certain parts of those tasks done. And our DevOps culture was just a concept at this point. DTS, state of Utah, knew that that was something they wanted to move into, but it was just kind of starting to be talked about how we can do this, how we can move to this type of concept and this type of culture. And so our team, the Cloud Ops team, was told that we need to start doing things in Terraform. We have a large AWS offering presence and a little bit of GCP and Azure, but up to that point, we hadn't done a whole lot with Terraform, our team at least. And our Cloud Ops knowledge, our experience was still pretty moderate and new. So this was something that was in our minds, was kind of a large undertaking that we had to do infrastructure as code while we're still trying to get our grasp on cloud and what it can be used for. So that goal was very hard for us to wrap our minds around at first. And it was a little bit of a challenge for us and a little bit of a daunting task. And from my perspective and most of my team, we have no programming experience. Most of us are previously sysadmins that have moved into other roles and ended up on this team that was in charge of cloud operations and cloud provisioning. And so we'd only dabbled in some scripting roles, PowerShell and Bash and things like that. So it was a little bit of overwhelming for us on day one to be told that we need to start doing infrastructure as code with Terraform, and that you need to start doing that across the board pretty much. So you can go to the next slide there, James. So to get started in this cloud journey, and I don't know about all of you, but reading documentation is not my favorite thing to do. If you're that type of person, you can go and read the documentation and I'm sure you'll learn great. But for me, if I can sit down and actually do things and start jumping in, working with it, I learn better by doing rather than reading. And so, like right at the start, day one, there was a few key staff members, a couple of our cloud architects really, that had some experience with Terraform, but our team did not. So they were willing to sit down with us in that initial period and help us run through some of the Terraform principles and show us what they had used it for. And that helped a lot. But even if you don't have anyone in your organization that has any experience, there's a whole community that's willing to help. And there's also some great starter sessions on YouTube, or you could reach out to James or another SE, and I'm sure they'd put you in touch with or be willing to jump on and to get you that first experience that I got through some of our cloud architects. So after that first day one, here's what Terraform is, and here's what we've used it for. For me to get started in it, I started with some simple tasks in a sandbox AWS account. So setting up an EC2 instance in a security group, just start playing with it, learn the syntax, go to the documentation for that to see how do you declare an EC2 instance, how do you declare a security group and attach that to the EC2 instance. Because we had experience doing that in the console of AWS. Now we had to learn how to do that over and over again with the infrastructure as code. And so that was kind of what helped me to learn, is just getting in and getting started and playing with it. We didn't have a specific thing, here's what we want you to be using it for. It was kind of just a broad mandate at the time. So just taking our time, not expecting perfection, was what helped us. Start small, have access to go look at what you just created is something that's invaluable. Helps you to connect those dots. So a sandbox account or something that you can go and look, deploy some Terraform apply, and you want to see everything in the console that provisioned. So that's an excellent thing that you can have, that I'm sure your organization can get for you, so that you can play around and learn and investigate other resources that you could possibly use that for. Don't expect your templates, your Terraform templates, to be perfect when you put them into use. Some people, I know, especially those that might have a mindset like mine, is you want everything to be perfect before you hit that apply, before you ever do that. But that's part of the learning process. Even if things are successful and you think it's perfect, a week, 2 weeks down the line, you're going to find things that you want to add, things that you want to take away, things that you want to change the way you did that. It's part of the process. Just embrace it, because we're all learning, especially every day. You can't know everything in IT. I think we've all probably learned that. So you just kind of have to play around with it and keep trying new things. Go ahead to the next slide there, James. So some of the things that we discovered through our process of getting involved with this is that Terraform's great because you don't have to have a whole long history of programming experience. As my journey proves, I have hardly any programming experience. In fact, really none. You can't really consider scripting programming in sometimes. So Terraform is human readable. It's very intuitive. It's a structured set, and as James mentioned, you pretty much just tell the templates, this is what I want it to look like in the end, and the Terraform does the rest of the work for you. And also, you have a partner in HashiCorp. They are extremely helpful, and they'll point you in the right direction for learning resources. They seem to hold on to the value that no question is a stupid question, because I'm sure I've asked them a lot of stupid questions, but they don't think that. They're willing to help you. They have many examples to offer you. They're willing to jump on and help if you have some questions or you're working through something. So some discoveries is to use them, use HashiCorp. Because if you're like me, you probably just download Terraform and you start playing with it. And maybe you spend a couple hours Googling a problem that James probably could have answered in one email sentence. So not to take all of James' time, but use him or use your SE that's assigned to your organization, because they're going to be extremely helpful for you. Go ahead to the next slide for the lessons learned. Some other lessons that we learned. HashiCorp will do a workshop, a day one workshop with you. And we learned that you should do this as soon as possible, because we didn't do that as soon as possible. Probably, 3 to 6 months into our journey is when we had our day one workshop. And so it really gives you basic understanding of Terraform and what it can accomplish, basic understanding of its structure, its declaring things. And so we now see the value in getting that early on, not waiting to get that base knowledge of what Terraform is. Things are changing rapidly and they'll continue to change. So give yourself an opportunity to play with the tool, learn it, and get in and get down to business with this workshop day one. And that's another thing that I learned, at least, is that for me, because I'm not a programmer, in order to do this, even these Terraform templates, scripting, anything like that, I have to have quiet time, concentration. So I was able to talk to my supervisor, Patrick, and say, I have to learn this, and I need some time when I can turn my phone off, I can turn IMs off, and I can just dive in, play around with it, undistracted. And so having that time, even if it's just in a 1 hour increment, is really invaluable. And if you can get your supervisor, your manager to help you with that, or if you are a manager, if you can provide that for your staff, that's really going to help them a lot. Go ahead to part 2, James. So another thing that we talked about a little bit already is that safety first mentality. Have a sandbox environment that you can build things, tear them down, do it often, do a plan, apply, do a destroy, so that you don't feel like you're going to hurt something. If you're trying a new thing with your template, or you want to change something with your practice templates. And the beauty of Terraform is that you can keep costs by doing that, exactly that. You can deploy a bunch of infrastructure in the cloud, or anywhere really, on-prem even, and then you can destroy it once you've seen what you've done, so that your time of use is really short. Another thing that we learned is to reuse our templates and adjust them as we learn from that solid starting point. So don't reinvent the wheel, right? That's what one of my supervisors many years ago, when I first started scripting, his advice to me was, don't reinvent the wheel. Someone's already done it. If you can find it in a quick Google search, then plagiarize it. Don't feel bad. HashiCorp GitHub, they have a lot of examples. There's another Cloud Posse GitHub. They have a lot of excellent examples of ways that you can do things. So if you come across something that you want to do in Terraform, and it seems like a large endeavor, seems like, man, that's a lot of work to write all that out, do a couple Google searches. More than likely, you'll find someone who's done some sort of version of that. You can see what they've done, edit it, look through it, and make it fit what you want to do. And then that way you'll save yourself time. Another excellent example is to leverage not only public modules with Terraform, but you can create your own modules too. And that'll allow you to have dry code principle, where you're using the same code many times for deploying similar resources. So for instance, we have modules for things that we're deploying in all of our accounts, whether that be VPCs, IAM roles, if we're deploying the same type of IAM users and policies, or beanstalk instances, those type of things. We have modules where we can declare a few variables and call that module and have infrastructure that's repeatable, but that also we can customize to this new account or this new application. And so that's another great thing about Terraform, is that you can use these modules so that you're not typing out that same code over and over again in your different repos, that you can just call that module. You don't even have to copy and paste that template. Another extremely important thing is to use a version control system that they integrate really well with HashiCorp tools. Use them to store and keep your history, to have different branches, different commits. And that'll help, especially if you're working as a team and trying to share code. Another thing that we found at the state of Utah is that as we started to get further into our Terraform usage, we needed some way for us to be able to do more things on an enterprise level. And so we started using just recently Terraform Enterprise, which is an on-prem version of Terraform Cloud. They're kind of the same thing. And in that way, we can have it connected to our repos, and we can have a place where all of us, as my team, and not only my team, but the cloud architects and other DevOps groups, can go in and see how we're doing things. They can see that we have this workspace that is working for this set of infrastructure or this application. They can see where that repo is in our Git environment, and they can see the runs that we've done and some of the variables that we've declared in order to do that. And so it's a great way to not only make things enterprise grade, but also to share information throughout our organization. So those are just some of the things that we've learned. And disclaimer, I'm still nowhere near an expert on Terraform. I'm learning every day. I'm being told by people that are much smarter than me, why don't you do it this way? Or maybe if you use this loop, it would be better or something. So as I said, my programming experience is very minimal, so I'm happy to learn from other people, and don't think that we're perfect. We're still in the journey, and we're not done yet with our HashiCorp journey. So now we'll turn our attention to my supervisor, Patrick, who wants to say a few things about our journey as well.
Excellent, thanks, Randy. So, as Randy has mentioned, it's been, quite an experience for us at the state to get off the ground with HashiCorp and to start using the product effectively. And just to give you a little bit of perspective, so our team, as Randy mentioned, we are kind of the operational side of the cloud at the state of Utah, and do a lot of daily duties, but we're also transitioning to DevOps, which will move some of those responsibilities from our group to developers and DevOps personnel within the state. And so our main focus really is to build pieces of the environment that are maybe large and complex, and also support those DevOps engineers in what they are doing. So from my perspective, and looking at how Randy learned this, and how some of my other employees have learned this, Randy, as he mentioned, he's got a storage and sysadmin background. So he had worked on some things in the past, Bash and PowerShell and some other things, just to essentially speed up, what we were doing on a daily basis. So he was familiar enough with how scripting was supposed to work, even though he wouldn't consider himself a developer or anything of that nature. So it's important to be at least somewhat familiar with how scripting works, even if it's just Bash. And so, moving on with that, as Randy mentioned, we did work closely with some cloud architects that we have at the state who had been using Terraform for a little bit, just for some very basic operations, as well as application specific things. And what we kind of did is we worked together with them and made a common repo that we could all use, because everybody was kind of storing their code all over the place at that point. And really getting on the same page with our architects and even some of our developers was key to really moving this to the next step. So, as Randy mentioned, he's willing to learn new things, and to be effective at using Terraform and any other tools from HashiCorp, you really need to be open to doing things a different way than maybe you're used to. One of the things that he mentioned as well is that he asked for some time to sit down and kind of learn that. And I think that's important, to give your employees time to learn a product, either through a training course of some kind, or if it's more effective, some time away from daily duties to learn things by practice. And so it's very advantageous to have a sandbox environment, as Randy mentioned, because being able to mess up is a key way of learning, and it's hard to do that on a production account. In fact, you don't want to do that on a production account. So depending on which cloud vendor you're working with, or multiple vendors, you may even be able to reach out to that vendor and work with HashiCorp. That's actually how we kind of started working more with HashiCorp, was through one of our cloud vendors. And we quickly realized that we should have done this a long time ago, as Randy mentioned. But don't hesitate to, get your cloud vendor involved with someone from HashiCorp, and do things, or build a session that will benefit you in the way that you're trying to do and accomplish certain things. So the last things I wanted to mention were, the team communication was very key for us. Sharing code with other teams as well, through our Git repo and other methods, as well as just our general cloud journey, and moving to the cloud. We are just kind of getting DevOps to where we want it to be, and it's kind of moved along with our automation, and Terraform has been a big piece of that. And so getting your automation working correctly with Terraform, as well as your organization structured properly to handle what you're doing, as well as giving your employees time to learn, are the key tenets in my eyes of making a successful journey through, from on-prem to the cloud, and using products like Terraform. So James, I'll turn it back over to you.
Hey, thank you, Patrick. So, just to recap, kind of what we covered here today, and some of this discussion around the journey that the state of Utah has experienced. If you're looking at doing some kind of cloud migration, you're looking at dipping your toe into the waters of the cloud, and you're setting up an initiative. You're trying to think about some of what are the capabilities that I'm going to need, what are the skill sets that I'm going to need to be able to go on this journey. Really hope that you look at Terraform as being one of those things that can help you start the journey, right? As I laid out in that distributed infrastructure diagram, setting up the infrastructure and getting that right is a core tenet, right? It's very much like building the foundation of a house that's going to last many, many years. I think another theme that I heard quite a bit throughout this was, this notion of not only starting small, but not shooting for perfection, right? It's really shooting for proficiency, using the tools over and over, getting to know them, very much like a master craftsman gets to know their own tools and knows the idiosyncrasies of how their chisel or their plane works on wood, and what works and what doesn't work, and what is a shortcut, and where you get the most bang for your buck, right? And that might not even be specific to Terraform itself. That is really something that you can expect to get as you use any tool. We recognize there's a large variety of ways to provision infrastructure out there, but the key here is to pick one, I guess, and focus. That really does pay dividends. Another theme is really to leverage a lot of resources that are out there for free. I am constantly amazed by the power of the capabilities that come with Terraform open source that we provide. And that is not by accident. That is something that the company does deliberately. We always look at capabilities that we want to provide in our products such that they don't leave our users, open source or enterprise, paying or not, in a bad place, right? So there's a lot of lessons to learn, a lot of tutorials, a lot of self-paced learning materials out there. There's workshops, many of them run weekly, some of them, most of them free. You can do paid workshops, paid training. There are all sorts of resources out there that can really act as an accelerator for you going on that journey. And then again, I think the biggest gem of all is pick a small target, define your use case very, very clearly. Even better, make sure that use case is backed up by a business case, right? So it's not necessarily just something that's a nice to have. It is something that you can see is going to be critical for your organization and that will bring business value. That will just help you to sell the message within your organization as to, here's a solution that will work for me. And then iterate. It is a journey, and it's not called a journey for no good reason, right? So a quick call to action from my side before we jump into questions here. What can you do today? You can connect with us and we'll have our contact information as part of this deck when we make it available, or you can just connect with your HashiCorp rep. Talk to us, right? And we can go into deep dive of any of these topics. Even though we do sell enterprise, we do have a lot of conversations with practitioners using the open source product. And we guide them in the right directions and methodologies and ways of using the product. And then at that link that you see there, a free webinar, lots of events held every week on different topics, on different products, different, and all levels, beginners, for intermediate folks, and some advanced folks as well. And then finally, just ask more questions. Please connect with us, reach out and ask us, about other use cases that we're seeing and hearing about. And, we'll be happy to give you our own suggestions for how we think a lot of those things could also be tackled. And so I think at this point, I'd like to just open up the floor for questions for myself, for Randy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We have quite a few, so I'll just jump right into it. This one's probably for Patrick or Randy. Is state of Utah now consuming multiple clouds?
Yes. Yes, we are.
Okay, and then we have a follow-up too. Did state of Utah spend any time bringing existing assets under management of TF, or was it mostly new apps and workloads?
We're kind of doing, go ahead, Randy.
I was just gonna say mostly new. So we're not really like taking all of our servers in on-prem and virtual center and importing them into Terraform. That we might be using that to deploy on-prem stuff in the future, but it's mostly for net new stuff at the moment.
Gotcha. This one's likely for James. How can we connect Terraform with Ansible? Is there any provisioner?
That's a great question, and it's one that I get a lot of the time. So there is no named provisioner for Ansible, but what we normally see is people provision and trigger the running of a playbook using one of the local exec or remote exec provisioners. So that is a mechanism by which you can actually run a command on a machine, remote or local. You can have the command either execute on your machine or execute on the target infrastructure you've just stood up. So that is typically the way we see it get triggered. Now, that is not saying that there might not be a provider somewhere out there in the open source world, perhaps on GitHub, on GitLab, that someone's written to explicitly call and run playbooks. But those are the sort of two scenarios that I see.
Great. And then another one, I use Azure DevOps Server ARM JSON templates for our IAC and 90% provision against Azure. We're looking at Terraform since it seems less code heavy. Any advice on our transition? On transitioning our current repos to Terraform and HCL?
So that's a good question. So part of it is going to depend on how many of these there are. So if they are, if it's a really large quantity, I would honestly recommend, we have a couple of partner organizations that we work with who actually specialize just in transforming templates written in, for Azure specifically, or using CloudFormation, whatever it might be, transforming those into HashiCorp HCL solutions that can then be used from that point on with Terraform. And these companies have their own sort of accelerator. So they've written a lot of code, which they don't really sell, but they do use in professional services engagements to do the transformation. So if you have large numbers of these that you do need to transform, it may very well be worth doing that. For the cases where you have a lot fewer of these, I would suggest a combination of simply having Terraform import the infrastructure and then go through a bit of a task there of figuring out whether it's imported everything that you needed to know to be able to re-provision now using Terraform, or just literally rewrite them side by side. I would go to that as the last step after exhausting the prior two options I just threw out.
Awesome. And then do you guys incorporate Terraform into any service catalog type of solution, for example, ServiceNow, et cetera, or do engineers strictly provision through TFE terminal?
Yeah, that's another great question. Thank you for that one. So we do not have, so Terraform, even Terraform Enterprise, is a really good tool for an operator. It's designed as an operator's tool. It was never designed as the front end for an end customer, a mission owner, to a citizen to take and then use that to provision infrastructure for, let's say, a development environment or for some application that needs to be deployed. So we do have a ServiceNow application, custom application that we have written at HashiCorp. It does work with Terraform Enterprise, so you can't use it with the open source piece. But if you do have Terraform Enterprise today, you have the self-service module as part of your subscription. You can get a ServiceNow custom application, which can be deployed on your ServiceNow instance. It does not require any special modules on the ServiceNow side. It'll use the basic ServiceNow platform because it uses the REST APIs on that platform. And that would allow you to use ServiceNow service catalog items. We actually create a couple of basic catalog items that you can reuse and extend yourself. So you have full control. You can change out the workflow behind the catalog items. You can change out how the catalog items look and in which service portal you expose them into. So we have that as really the main self-service angle that we provide today.
Great. And then it says, James, we have different cloud environment providers with the Terraform workflows designed work for AWS the same way for GCE or Azure.
Yeah, so the idea of infrastructure as code is not the idea that you had with Java, for example. It's not you write one infrastructure as code file and then you aim it at GCP or aim it at Azure and it does the magic. Every one of these cloud providers have slightly different semantics, different names for things, different configuration options. So there's actually no way it can all be exactly the same. So what you're learning with infrastructure as code is you learn one way that is generally the same to declare and provision infrastructure, right? So the first thing that you're doing that's different is you're not going into a console to click, right? You have a file that you define with the target infrastructure. It may be slightly different names that you use for Azure, GCP, or VMware or AWS. But if you look at the content, it's, an engineer would typically recognize it as being literally the same things that you're setting up. They may have different names for each cloud provider. So it's not a it's not the traditional write once, run everywhere sort of thing, but it is pretty much the same thing, the same way, regardless of where you're going to be provisioning. So yeah, it's not a one-to-one exact, but the difference in the journey from writing infrastructure as code files for AWS versus Azure versus GCP is a lot smaller than if you were trying to do this with CloudFormation and then go to something that Azure does and then go to GCP or any other provider. I hope that answers the question.
I think so. And then this question I think can be for maybe Patrick or Randy. Have you used Terraform against other providers than cloud, for example, like a Palo Alto? If so, how do you think that worked?
Not so far. It is something we're looking at in the future. We're actually looking at possibly using it on some of our on-prem infrastructure, but we just haven't gotten to that point yet. So that's a good question, though.
James, anything you want to chime in there?
I'll just say I don't have specific experience myself with Palo Alto equipment, but for the most part, the examples and the demos that I come across, my customers are really provisioning either against a cloud provider or something like an OpenStack, right? Or against a VMware and standing up the infrastructure there. So I'm unfortunately don't have much to contribute to that question.
No problem. I don't see any other questions, so I'll just give a minute if anyone would like to submit any others. If not, oh, I do see one coming through. I am facing issues while applying RBAC in Azure via Terraform. I'm not sure exactly what the question is. It just says that they're facing some issues.
Yeah, sounds like he's having challenges setting up role-based access through Terraform scripts, Terraform infrastructure as code files. I guess it would depend on the nature of the challenge that you're coming across. I found Azure can be a little bit complicated sometimes to work with. Every cloud provider has slightly different nuances. I would just say if he could, send a message over to myself, my first name, my first initial, last name at HashiCorp.com. Just send me some details there, and I'd be happy to take a look and maybe try and help you out.
Awesome. A few more came in. Okay. How large can Terraform deployments scale? Are there ways to control pace?
So that's an interesting question. So when you say when it says how large, I'm trying to figure out a couple ways to think about that. So one of the things that happens with a Terraform enterprise instance when you run it is it breaks out multiple concurrent runs at once, right? So today, if you use Terraform Cloud, you are limited to one concurrent run at a time. There are a couple of changes that were added into the Terraform core as of, I think, release 13. And one of those is this notion of depends on. So this depends and dependency mechanism that was added will allow you to, well, first of all, because with Terraform Enterprise, you can have multiple concurrent runs building a lot of infrastructure all going on at once. If you have dependencies, which would be one of the big problems you would run into, you would have a way to specify what those dependencies would be, right? So what pieces need to be built before other pieces by declaring a dependency relationship. But I mean, I've heard of massive numbers of machines being started. I've heard of hundreds, if not thousands and thousands of machines being stood up all at once. For example, for training lab sessions at conferences, for example, right? So I know, for example, that ServiceNow itself uses Terraform for some of its infrastructure stand-up. And, so imagine you have a conference with 20,000 people and maybe 5,000 of those are going to be needing labs the next day. How do you stand up all that infrastructure at once in AWS? Terraform can handle that. So I don't know if I'm addressing the scale question, but it's really a combination of the fact that I can do multiple runs at the same time with Terraform Enterprise, and at the same time, I can declare dependencies so that things don't, break because they were expecting other things to be up.
Great. And I think Patrick was answering one of the questions that came in from Chris. And lastly, did State of Utah have any unexpected benefits come from adopting Terraform?
Yeah, I mean, unexpected.
Sorry, go ahead, Randy.
Not really sure. Some of the benefits that we've had is speed of provisioning. So for instance, when we have like new cloud accounts that have to have initial provisioning of VPCs and IAM and everything, just the speed at which we can do that over clicking around the console is so much greater. So we can get those new accounts into the hands of the DevOps teams so much faster. And just being able to share code kind of helps you share a mindset with your team and other teams. So you're kind of seeing how people do things. Whereas if you just go look at a server that somebody deployed, you don't really know what went into that.
This is
Yeah,
James.
and it's helped us to kind of get ourselves organized, you know, in the way that we structure our accounts and you know, things of that nature. So it's just helped us form our DevOps model even better than what we had, you know, originally anticipated. So.
And this is James. I'll just add that, you know, what I think one of the unexpected benefits that a lot of our customers get and only comment about after the fact is there's just a lot less friction that occurs between the different groups who need provisioning to happen and those who need to govern the provisioning process. So security teams need to lay out, for example, policies, Sentinel policies around provisioning. Think about it. What you've done right there is you've eliminated the need for security to audit physically or be part of the process for provisioning. They are involved as code. They're no longer involved through ticketing systems or through weekly meetings. So what you're going to see is a tremendous amount of a lot less coordination between these teams because they are coordinating through Terraform Enterprise, right? It's handling a lot of the policy stuff for the security guys. For those who need consistent ways to provision and control that, then that's what the infrastructure as code approach is supporting. So these teams are actually collaborating, working together, but there's no friction, or there's a lot less friction.
Great. Yeah, I think that's a great note to end on. Thank you so much for your time, Randy, Patrick, and James. As I mentioned in the beginning, the session was recorded. We'll make that recording available on our website after processing. I'll also send an email to everyone who registered with that link. Hope everyone enjoyed today's webinar, and that wraps things up for us. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.